Okay, well, hello and welcome to another one of my video log recording sessions where I talk about genetic algorithms. So, the date is 2025, April 21st, and today, in this session, I'm going to talk about, well, all the Procreate functions under, or rather with, the new better evolution scheme, and observe the behaviors of plots in terms of summed utility values, and see or check if there are any visible dips, as we may have previously seen when I used the old evolution scheme. So, as I've said quite a few times by now, I am using the new evolution scheme, which I'm not going to draw it this time, but which ranks the entities and then procreates, and then selects the newborns, selects a certain percentage of the newborns, and then adds those newborns at the end, at the very front of the old existing world from the previous generation, and then every entity in that new world goes through mutation, and then every entity goes through the selection process. Gets applied the selector function, and then the entire population gets limited to the maximum population size, which has been for some days now 1.0 times population size. Excuse me. Okay, I needed to sneeze there. So that's how, and that would be the end of one generation. So that's what I did, except for every set of iterations of evolutions, I would be using a different procreate function. And there are 10 procreate functions. Oh god, I need to sneeze again. Good lord. Namely, lonely procreate, monopoly elite procreate, monopoly all procreate, oligopoly procreate, fav high procreate, proportional procreate, less favoring high procreate, opposites procreate, birds of feather procreate, and random selection procreate. Now, I have explained what these procreate functions do in one of my old videos, and almost nothing has changed about how they work, so I'm not going to go into that now. In this video, I'm just going to have a look at the distribution of these of the entities, the distribution of entities after the final iteration. So I'm iterating everything for 5 times, but however the entity distribution would be would only be representing the last iteration, the 5th one. And apart from that, all the values for heads, the top 10%, and the tails are still going to be there. And I'm going to zoom in a bit. So this is when I used Lonely Procreate. This is what happened, and the heads go for this, looks like this. The top 10% it looks like this. Tails looks like this. And then when I zoom in until generation 10, it looks like this. Generation 45, it looks like this. Generation 80, it looks like this. Generation 100, about the same as the entire plot. Generation 150, not much difference. But it would make little sense to go through all of this. So I made a PDF file, and I gathered all the things so that I can have a look at all of it all at once and make it easier for, you know, analysis. So here's how it is. So this is what Lonely Procreate, the entity distribution of the final iteration, looks like. You can see that because the Lonely Procreate function was used, there are quite a few values towards the very upper end. And if we look at the Lonely Procreate, actually let's not do that, let's go down vertically, and then when we look at Monopoly Elite Procreate, this is what happened. You can see that it looks slightly more bell curved in a normal distribution, more than this. And then this is what happens if you use Monopoly or Procreate. Yeah, more bell curve shaped. It's not necessarily a good thing or a bad thing. All I can say that maybe this is more robust, or this could be more robust, or this could be more robust. It depends on the situation. And Oligopoly Procreate, this looks a lot more heavy, a lot heavier towards the upper end, even more than Lonely Procreate. And Favoring Highs, somewhat similar to Oligopoly, but slightly more dispersed. Proportional Procreate, now this is a proper normal distribution. You can see it's very beautiful. Again, the word beautiful is subjective. Less Favoring Highs. Yeah, more of a bell-shaped compared to the Favoring Highs, but still quite similar. And then Opposites Procreate, a lot heavy in the center. But a further Procreate, well, this is where entities that were similar together got to mate. And a lot more bell curved, bell shaped. And Random Selection, well, everything was literally random. But however, these distribution plots are quite not easy to understand, not easy to compare compare, because their scales are different. For example, this one starts from 700 and ends at 1400, whereas this one starts from 600 and ends at 1200. So the next column is exactly that. It accounts for exactly that. So this next column of distribution illustrations of distributions, entity distributions, all have the same, all are scaled identically. So you'll see that the maximum y value is 40, and they all start from 0 and ends somewhere above 1600. Yeah. So this is what happens when you use Lonely Procreate. These are oops, this and this are the same plots, or the same distribution plots. It's just that this one right now that we have on screen is framed differently on the same scale with every other plots that are about to come below. So this is Lonely Procreate. Yeah, you see a lot of values up here. This is Monopoly Elite Procreate. You see that more values are sort of pushed to the right, whereas in Lonely Procreate we had some values around 600, 700 and 800, but when we used Monopoly Elite Procreate we have no values around 600, and then there are some values, only a few values around 700, and around 800 we start getting more and more values. So yeah, and this is what happens when you use Monopoly All Procreate. You see, now you see that we have more values towards the middle, but we do not have higher values over here when we use Monopoly All Procreate. As you see here, that we don't have any values above 1500. And by the way, the maximum ever that we can get is probably, where is it? 1540. So we can safely assume that we had a 1540 here, and probably the same here as well. Maybe not here, but we don't have that when we use Monopoly All Procreate, except now all the entities are squished somewhere in the middle. Oligopoly Procreate, now we have more values, but towards the higher half of the spectrum, and then we do have some values above, quite a lot of values above 1500. However, I think these four data points are quite odd. I mean, I think at least these 2 points are kind of outliers. They just happened. I don't think these would happen every time, but they happened anyway. And I say that because this is the snapshot of the last iteration. Favoring high Procreate, so Oligopoly Procreate and favoring high Procreate look kind of the same, except that there are more entities. The number of entities towards the higher end of the sum utility values are high when you use Oligopoly Procreate, and when you use favoring high Procreate, those numbers are higher in the mid range of the spectrum of sum utility values. And proportional Procreate, now you see that the entire bell-shaped curve has shifted to the left compared to these plots when you use proportional. So you know that maybe proportional Procreate does not produce such high sum utility values, which again, might be a good thing or a bad thing. Less favoring high Procreate, yes, so we've seen this. What's odd here is that we don't have any values. We don't have any outlying values on either side of the end. Yeah, compared to this one, but they're similar because they're supposed to work in similar ways. They work in a similar way anyway. And opposites Procreate. Now this left shift is even more severe and this is where entities procreated, entities who are very dissimilar, or the most dissimilar, and as long as, if possible, as long as they're not exactly the same, but very, very dissimilar, got together and procreated, and then gave offsprings. So, well, this is what happens. It could have been. Let me just take a screenshot of this, and then I get. So this is what we have, and I'm just going to draw. So far we've had, oh my god. So far we've had this, or this, or what was the other one? Oligopoly, yeah, this one. Or this, but compare these reds and black to this one, where the center is shifted compared to the other ones to the left, even more. And that was opposites procreate, and then birds of feather procreate. You can see here that although these work in, well, the mechanism they use, the mechanism that these two functions use is the same. It's just that one goes for the similar ones, as in this one does, and this opposites procreate goes for the dissimilar ones, and then they become parents and then create offsprings. But however, the results are almost about the same. Quite identical, which is, I think that's quite fascinating. And then random selection, which again is still just about the same as these two, birds of feather and opposites procreate. So now let's have a look at the summed utility plots for the heads, for the 10 items, for the 10 procreate functions. So this is how it looks like for the heads. Lonely procreate, monopoly procreate. See that the heads constantly reach the black dotted line, which is the highest ever, or the maximum. Well, yeah, the highest ever, or the maximum ever. And the same for monopoly elite procreate. But this is only, well, for lonely procreate this is possible because the highest one always gets passed on to the next generation, so that's easier. This is easier for this algorithm to happen. And however, monopoly elite procreate also kind of does that. Monopoly all procreate does not do that, because the head entity, the top entity, gets to mate with any entity within that population of that generation, so the head might not stay. And however, the oligopoly procreate also does manage to constantly and persistently provide entities with entities that hit the maximum ever value. And so does favoring high procreate, but slightly less stable compared to oligopoly procreate. And then proportional procreate, it sometimes does that, and then it fails miserably. I shouldn't say miserable, it just fails at that. Less favoring highs, similar to favoring highs, but slightly more unstable. Opposites procreate, it does happen, but it's not then again, the maximum ever, the black dash dotted line, in this case would be 1540, and same here, and same here, probably here as well, not so much here because we can see that it's 1400, and then less favoring high Procreate, probably here as well, but you know, it's a lot fewer times. And opposites Procreate, you see that the maximum ever, the black line, is slightly above 1400, so it's not going to be at 1540. And Birds of Feather Procreate, nowhere near that. Birds of Feather Procreate, nowhere near that. Oh no, that's the wrong plot. So I should fix that. Let's have a look. I can fix that. Okay, here we go. So what are we looking at? Opposites Procreate heads. This should be random. Let's just put it here. Fine. What is it? What am I looking for? Birds of Feather, and then random. Birds of Feather, and then random heads. Random selection heads. Okay, cool. And that goes in here. And what's the size of this? Okay, 1767, 1364. I hope I remember that. 1767, 1364. Yes, I did. Nice. And then go away. Awesome. So that happened. Well, embarrassing, but since this is raw footage, I showed you how I did it. So let's just stick to the Google slides for now. So Lonely Procreate top 10%. You see the now the gold lines are the peaks, and the blue lines are the plateaus. So not much of a visible, dip. And the plateau is at around slightly lower than 1400. However, when we look at Monopoly Elite Procreate, the plateau is at 1400. And then Monopoly All Procreate, the peak level, the average peak level, is below 1400, and the plateau level is also below, I think slightly below 1300, so that's lower. But if you look at Oligopoly Procreate, the plateau level is slightly above 1400, but compare this to Monopoly Elite Procreate, you'll see that the blue line is higher, or rather, let's just say is lower when Monopoly Elite Procreate was used, because it's ever so slightly above 1400. However, when we look at the Oligopoly Procreate, we can see that the blue line is a bit higher than that. Yeah. And Favoring High Procreate, you can see that the for the top 10%, the plateau level is below 1400, but the peak level is above 1400. Proportional Procreate, now this everything is just lower. Less favoring highs, lower again. I mean, higher than this, but lower than favoring highs or oligopoly Procreate. Opposites attract Procreate, so same as almost the same as proportional Procreate. And birds of feather Procreate and random selection Procreate. So yeah, I mean, these 3 or 4 examples or results are as expected because we've seen the distributions. And let's have a look at the tails. Lonely Procreate tails, Monopoly Elite Procreate tails. You can see that when we use Lonely Procreate, the plateau level for the tails do not get raised, because as we can see here, when we use Monopoly Elite Procreate, the plateau level for the tails is higher. However, it's between 400 and 600. But when we use this Monopoly Elite Procreate, it is above 600. Well, sometimes less, but generally above. And then Monopoly All Procreate is still above 600. However, when we use Lonely Procreate, it's below 600. Probably 550 or something. And Oligopoly Procreate, it's above 600. Favoring Highest Procreate, it's above 600. Proportional, slightly less than, even proportional is higher than when we use Lonely Procreate. And less favoring high Procreate, yeah. And then opposites Procreate. So the plateau level for the tails, when we use Lonely Procreate and opposites Procreate and birds of feather Procreate and random selection Procreate, are about the same. And I think that might be because of the fact that only the top entities are being replicated here, and there aren't any significant changes to other entities, and therefore you get this. For the tails, Lonely Procreate might as well be the same as random selection or opposites attract or birds of feather. And this is when you zoom in. Well, for until generation 10, well, all we have to pay attention to are the slopes. And you'll see that when we use again Lonely Procreate, these are the slopes. Monopoly Elite Procreate, yeah, slightly higher than that. Monopoly All Procreate, a bit lower. And then when we have the Oligopoly Procreate, we do start getting higher slopes or bigger slopes. And favoring highs Procreate, proportional, less favoring highs, opposites Procreate, birds of feather, random selection. So again, here you can see that well, for the well, let's have a look at the heads again. No, I mean the top 10%. And then yeah, so the slopes are not that remarkable, even when we use Lonely Procreate. I mean, they do look okay, but we get just about the same. But we do have a healthier population when we use Oligopoly Procreate or favoring highs. and then this is until generation 45. So probably yeah, the because everything starts from 0, so this is until 11th and this is until 46th, but doesn't really matter in this case. So this is lonely Procreate. You see that now it's reaching the peaks and the plateaus. Same here, same here. Oligopoly Procreate, yep, same here. It's still they still haven't reached it yet by generation 45. None of the Procreate functions have managed to do that until generation 45. I remember this is for 50 items. This is for 50 items, yeah, not 40. Why 50? Why not? Why not 40? And why 50? I felt like it. And until generation 80, now we have the peaks and the plateaus, same. Still haven't, reached there yet. Oligopoly Procreate, now we start, getting there. Same for Fahrenheit. It did for 1 or 2 plots, iterations. Proportional, yeah, but then again, these 2 levels are lower compared to all the other all these Procreate functions. That's Fahrenheit, yeah. Offsets, okay. And until generation 100, we should see that by now all Procreate functions should have reached their peaks and plateaus. Till generation 100, yep, they have done that. Monopoly Procreate still hasn't, reached there. Oligopoly Procreate, they're getting there soon. Fahrenheit, yep, they're getting there. So just one thing interesting here is that when it does reach the peak level, Fahrenheit might reach the peak sooner, because oligopoly only allows procreation amongst the elites, and however the Fahrenheit it literally favors just well, every entity has a certain amount of chance of being one of the 2 parents, although the head entity, the top entity, has the most chance and the bottom entity has the least chance. But maybe when something unlikely happens, that's when this happens. There's a slight spike until the up all the way to the peak level, and same here as well. So that's why I think when it comes to by which generation the plots reach the peak for the top 10%, favoring high Procreate will do that sooner than oligopoly Procreate. It's just a guess for now. Procreation or Procreate, yep, if we have the peaks and the plateaus. That's favoring highest Procreate, again same. Opposites Procreate, same. Birds of feather Procreate, same. Random selection Procreate, same. Okay, until 150 generation 150. So lonely Procreate, we have that. Monopoly elite Procreate, okay. Now everything is kind of hitting the peaks and plateaus. Monopoly or Procreate still hasn't hit the peaks because it just fluctuates too much. Well, at least none of the plots have shown any kind of visible dips where we and by dips I mean this gap that is never recovered. I'm not seeing anything like that here. Yeah, all lovely Procreate. Although the percentage difference between the gold lines and the blue lines may be bigger than 3%, but I'm not seeing any dips like this, because I see that sometimes it hits the gold line and then it comes back down, and then they still have a chance to go back up. Same here, same here, same here. Yeah, almost the same for every other things. Top 10%. Yeah, they always go up, come back down, go up and come back down. That's how they behave. So that's about it for now. And next I should probably I should save this. I should probably look into maybe combining the Procreate functions, getting the right mixture of them, or just move on to creating objects to track entities, maybe. Honestly, I don't know for now. I have no idea. But that's that. Thank you for watching. See you next time. Bye.